Hi everyone, welcome to chapter 12 on leadership. So this chapter we're going to discuss different leadership styles, what the differences are between managers and leaders, and some additional theories and authors on the subject of leadership itself. The good thing about this chapter is that there's a wealth of information and a wealth of perspectives on what makes great leaders and managers. And for those alumni returning, we've added perspectives on shared leadership models, as well as additional authors that I'll recommend at the very tail end of this video as well. So I'll like to start this chapter with really by talking about, for years we've been taught as leaders to use a style that I personally like to call the telling and yelling style of leadership. Tell and yell. Don't get me wrong, it works in certain situations for sure. But as we adapt our leadership styles to the millennials and Gen Zs who are entering the workforce today, this is no longer working. They are expecting more collaboration, context, and information to be successful in their job. Truthfully, they need it due to the work being different as well, to give them, defend them in another way, is because the work's more complex. It's highly creative and requiring greater levels of innovation and problem solving than yesterday's work. So we do need to provide additional information for them to be successful. So let's define leadership right now, and also the concept of shared leadership is what's developing that we see in organizational behavior. Organizations are learning to become much more adaptable now because things are changing so rapidly and so fast. So the concept of leadership has actually started to change as a role. It's a role, not a person. It's as a role, not a position. And so what we're seeing in the shared leadership models now is that employees lead each other as the occasion arises. It's transitional, temporary, and we can assume leadership responsibilities as required from the organization. This really corresponds with a lot of Amy Edmondson's work. She does a fantastic TED Talk previously on the concept of teaming that we've talked about in this class, and how organizations are changing to more flexible management structures where people lead temporarily in terms of project management teams for projects, and then they hand that baton of leadership to the next person that takes accountability for those projects. So what we're seeing is, what I mean by that is a much more transitional definition of what leadership is in tomorrow's job market. And so the next element the McShane textbook starts to talk about is the concepts of what is transformational leadership. And I can explain that by using four core concepts. Transformational leaders are really the leaders that really implement a lot of act as a change agent for organizations, and they do this by building commitment to a vision of an organization. So what this means is that they link their personal values to a vision, create a challenging objective, an abstract future state, and a unifying ideal for employees within the workforce to drive them towards a change. They develop and communicate that strategic vision that they have by using symbols and metaphors and framing that vision, and leaders communicate with humility, sincerity, and passion. And third, they encourage experimentation within the organization as well as and support a real learning organization in a company. And then fourthly, they model that vision within organizations. During the class lecture, we're going to discuss how you can model that vision yourself we'll deconstruct the framework that Nelson Mandela tends to use when he's trying to present a charismatic vision of a future state. And in the textbook, after we talk about transformational leadership, the textbook talks about the charismatic leader, problems and advantages, task-oriented and people-oriented and servant-based leadership in organizations, path goal theory, Fiedler's contingency model, and leadership substitute. So make sure you go through these sections just so that you have an awareness of that and so that when we meet during class, you'll understand the concepts that we're discussing and also share your perspectives on what you think about these perspectives. The textbook also covers off the traditional perspectives of what has been in the past, the 8 personal attributes associated with effective leadership, for example, charm being one of them, and being smart another one, right, as an example. So some of the things, this should make natural sense for you as you look through these 8 personal attributes that have traditionally defined what leadership is all about. Some other things that I thought I could talk about in today's YouTube video is really about the concept of authentic leadership and organizational behavior. what we're seeing today in the workplace changing is that employees are now looking for and managers that add the humanity into ourselves as people managers, show the human side of our, add our personal perspectives, our personal opinions. The change in expectations from employees today that we're humble, more self-deprecating, and bring our whole selves to the workplace and showcasing our personal side within the workplace. And so you can see even just in the physical dress code, like as an example I've talked about in this class before, is that I used to teach this class always in a suit and tie, every single class 10 years ago. But that's really changed nowadays, is that students and they're all expecting a much more informal nature to the presentations and discussions of in-class lectures as well. And we're seeing that in the job market as well. I think I also want to share during this class lecture is also the fact that when it comes to gender similarities and differences in leadership, is what we're seeing is that the research indicates that women are making much better leaders in today's job market. They're being fantastic during the pandemic of 2020, 2021, and it's being proven in women's ratings as leaders within organizations today. The irony is that our mental models and our perceptual biases continue to recruit male managers into positions of authority because that's what we assume make great leaders, but the research is proving otherwise, and I'll put some examples of that research listed at the bottom of this YouTube video for you as well that you can reference. We'll also talk about in the class lecture what the difference is between being a manager and leader. If you want, you can also reference that YouTube video separately in the management theory section of this the YouTube channel as well, but we'll debrief that during class as well. I think also want to make sure that what you do today is also make sure you watch the Drew Dudley video on the main page of the Prezi slides. He talks about lollipop moments and how sometimes as leaders we don't even realize it because we make it more than it is. It's not about being Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King standing in front of thousands and thousands of people, but Drew argues that it's really about the small moments in life that we often don't think about as being a true leader in organizational behavior. One example that I can think about is, if I can reach this up here, is this is a really small little card that an employee made for me one time when I was working at a large financial institution, and it's a little label cut off a bunch of niblets from Green Giant, and it says Cream of the Crop Award in May 2000. And a former coworker of mine gave that to me for all the help that I did for them a long time ago, and just reminds me that sometimes you don't think you're being a leader, but other people will see you that way, and they'll make these little cards, these simple things to just recognize that work that you do personally in the workplace that really takes care of others. So don't make yourself to think that you have to be Nelson Mandela as a leader. And some days it's just small, simple things that really make the world of difference in the workplace as well. For those alumni returning, what I've tried to do is put together a really good book reading list for you that I think that will really help you in terms of looking at different types of leadership perspectives. So the first I'll probably talk about is John Maxwell's work on the 21 Laws of Leadership. That's still a pretty good fundamental in terms of understanding what leadership is all about. The one thing I really love about this book is how leadership must be earned. John talks about how leadership must be earned and not received. And titles don't mean much, and you really need to work hard to earn that rather than demand it. And I love how John really talks about that during the first law as well. I think I've talked about this book before. There's also a YouTube video, Start With Why, on Simon Sinek, and I've attached it in the Prezi slides as the first introduction slide on the Prezi slide. So watch that video on the TED Talk with Start With Why. And Simon does a great job, and he wrote this book in 2009, which is talking about leading with telling people why you're doing something versus telling and yelling, and how great leaders really inspire people into action. And that's a fantastic book. I totally recommend it. What else do we have? The Truth About Managing People, for example. This is also a great book in terms of from Stephen Robbins. This is the 4th edition now, was updated in 2015 now, I think. And there's really great truths peppered in this book. And I love Stephen's talk about the first truth. Today's employees are increasingly looking for a more collaborative workplace, a more collaborative leader. And increased collaboration requires increased interactions with others, and successful interactions with others is dependent on your interpersonal competence as a leader. So a premium on EQ, empathy, and interpersonal skills is key in tomorrow's job market, and a predominant skill that's required in today's job is for sure. So I really like what Stephen talks about there. I've always loved this management scientist. It's Henry Mintzberg, and he talks about one of the core things that you could really look at here is the concept of management as a triangle of core skills. This includes the art side of the creativity, the science side of analysis, and the craft side of practical learning. And I really like how Henry really talks about the concepts of leadership and how you have to have this trifecta of skills to be a really successful manager and leader in organizations. The next book I'll probably talk about is this Leading the Unleadable, is from Alan Willett. I love this book. It was written in 2017, so it's still relatively recent. He talks about the exceptional leader believing that when someone is causing problems, it's not the person's intention to cause problems. It's almost certainly the troublesome person is trying to do his or her best to further the overall good of the organization or initiative. So I really like how Alan talks about reframing how you have problem employees. And the second part of this, I really like about this book is that he defines different types of problem employees and how to handle them in the workplace. And it might be a good reference tool for you in terms of how to deal with what he calls the mavericks, the cynics, the divas, and other difficult people in the workplace. So it was a great read. I enjoyed that one too. Another one is also Simon Sinek's, another follow-up from him, the second book, Leaders Eat Last. Simon talks about this in 2014, about creating a circle of safety with employees, giving your employees a sense of belonging by offering them a strong culture based on a clear set of human values and belief systems, by giving them the power to make decisions, by giving them trust, and by being empathetic. And during the class lecture, remind me to talk about the styrofoam coffee cup during this class lecture as well. So that's also a great book as well. And then I've added some links for on the YouTube for you. And sorry, this video is over 10 minutes long now, but I hope you enjoyed that overview. I can't wait to see you in class, and we'll talk a lot about leadership and managers in the workplace in the next upcoming lecture. So see you guys soon. Bye.